where you were on 2 April 2010, about 9 years ago-ish? Yeah, okay. Well, I was in a great location on the globe, great environment that I'd recommend you go to when you get opportunity, called Western Afghanistan. Just got up that morning, went running with my commander because we go running around the airfield. It was great because we made it, because we didn't get messed around with from the Afghan army that was guarding our airfield. Think about that military, American military on a base guarded by the Afghans. It was very safe. Went about my day, had my coffee, sitting in my operations center, much like a fusion center, just watching what's going on. Then around 11:30, something happens. We get a 9-line medical evacuation that drops, but it's happening in northern Afghanistan, where I had a unit that I just put up there to support the German area. Normal thing. There's something called the golden hour that we leverage when we're in a combat zone, meaning from the point of which any injury occurs, we have 1 hour to get that individual to the first line of medical care. Very normal thing. It's kind of what we do every day, all the time, even right now, okay? The difference with this one was that what actually occurred when the medical evacuation aircraft arrived, and they always fly in pairs, it was actually what we call a hot LZ. So there's actually a firefight of some type happening at the time. And if you think medical evacuation, there's a cross on the aircraft, and so there's not a whole lot of weapons sitting on a medical evacuation helicopter, because the Geneva Convention does not allow that to happen. Okay. So the crew has to react, and I'm watching this all go down over 500 miles away in Western Afghanistan. We can see them. We hear the messages. We have the radio traffic. The crew puts themselves between the insurgents as they try to save the German special forces who called for help. And there's a lot of things happening, okay? Now, when you think about my fusion cell, it has about 10 or 15 officers, a whole lot of cool stuff, whole lot of information coming into it. The outpost, on the other hand, has a radio, one computer, and a 19-year-old Army private first class who's been in the military less than 24 months. So who do you think's in charge? Is it me 500 miles away? What do you think? Or is it the 19-year-old private first class who's the closest to the fight? It's the latter. We had to delegate authority all the way down to a 19-year-old individual, one of America's finest. And she did a fantastic job, because I had to tell my guys to be quiet, leave her alone, and let her manage the fight. We'll get after it after everything is settled. So how does an organization that moves the same way, same day, 365 for over 240 years, allows a 19-year-old to manage that kind of situation? And just so you know, if you wonder, the Germans were saved. The air crews received the second highest medal that Germans give, and they went on to do their airborne mission the following day. Nothing changed for them, okay? We're a pretty big organization, right? And so at the time I was a major, with 15, 16 years in, and a 19-year-old had to run the fight, which is similar to your organizations. You're all right here, right now. There's something going on in your individual environments right now that you're having to delegate all the way down to someone sitting on a keyboard and hoping that they're going to make the right decision, much like we do in the Army and the Navy and the Marines and the Coast Guard, okay? So one way we do this is we leverage something called mission command. And I'm going to share with you this idea of mission command, which allows us to do these kind of things. Manage chaos, which is what you do every day. And I would say that we created it, like we came up with this thing, because we're smart and we're like the best army in the world, and no, we stole it from Napoleon from over 200 years ago. And how it came about, the idea of centralized command, decentralized control came about this way. In 1806, the Prussian army ran by William Frederick was a little upset by this upstart, this little short guy, Napoleon, and how the French were just like running through Central Europe nonstop, just beating army after army. And he came to the decision that he was going to crush them. So in two battles, Jena and Arstadt, he thought by splitting a small French army, he could just defeat them. It's 1806, so we kind of know what happens. Napoleon's still alive till Waterloo and stuff. So went up against the French won. So how does a smaller army that's outmanned, outgunned 2-1 beat the most prevalent force at the time on the field of battle? After they got defeated, the Prussian army went back and said, we need to do some studying. Much like every army, we go back and kind of try to figure things out. And they realized their doctrine was flawed. And what they did was they studied what the French did. And what they realized, and this guy named von Clausewitz, you might have heard of him. He's like a military theorist. If you've been to any kind of military thing, a lot of our current theories are based off of Clausewitz. So, Prussian general who lost. All right? So what he realized is that the French army, their officers, were able to take Napoleon's intent and rationale and exercise it and adjust based on the situation that they were given. Now think about this. This is the time before internet, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, instant messaging, over the horizon communications, and they were able to listen to what the commander said and then understand his intention and then exploit vulnerabilities in the enemy. And that's how they won. And so as we think about where Mission Command came from, it actually comes from this situation, the study of the Prussians, understanding how the doctrine that was employed allowed for subordinate leaders to understand intent versus the precision of orders. So don't do exactly what I say, do what I mean, which is kind of weird when you think about it. But we all kind of give direction in that way. And we expect that we have smart people who understand some of the implied task and what we're saying, and that there's a lot to every statement we make. Okay? And so that's kind of where Mission Command comes from. We stole it from Napoleon. And we've been getting very good at it every day for about 200 years. When we think about Mission Command, all it is the exercise of authority and direction by the commander, leveraging mission orders within the commander to enable discipline and initiative within the commander's intent to enable agile and adaptive leaders. That's what Mission Command is. That's all. So I tell somebody what to do. I provide them left and right limits in order for them to get things done. I give them an intent, some guidance, and then we're winning. That's all Mission Command is. And it takes into account our understanding that we're operating in an ever-changing, complex, ambiguous environment, right? And that military operations themselves are human endeavors. Much like the corporate setting, where you're operating in a vulnerable, uncertain, complex, ambiguous, and now hyper-connected environment, right? And you need to be able to figure out ways to ensure that your organization is agile. Not just organizationally, but at each level. Because the reality is, everything that is done cannot be ran up the flagpole. In my service, we'll say we have strategic corporals. In your organizations, you have strategic, like cyber warriors, so to speak, or IT security professionals, or risk managers who are making decisions when you're not there, based on something that you said, you did, or some policy you have. Okay? And in order for us to exercise Mission Command, we use this kind of process where we have to ensure that we're constantly touching how we assess, how we operate, and the commander's at the middle. But why is the commander or leader at the middle? Because can you really just say one thing and then walk away? I mean, how many times have you put out some kind of guidance and then just stepped away from it and hoped that everything worked out? There's a little saying, hope is not a method. You might have heard it at some point, but 15 years ago or so by Defense Secretary Rumsfeld, hope is not a method. And yet we hope that our people understand what we want them to do. We acknowledge that's not really the case, and that leaders have to engage at every point in the process. So this is how we, as a service, function every day, 365, and we didn't just start this like last week. So although we've been at war for 18 years, we've been continuously improving this process well before that. And when you think about leaders, I mean, there's things that you need to be able to do, but the most important thing that you can do is really think about what's going on between your ears, because you're only responsible for a few things, right? Only a few things. You're responsible for kind of understanding the operational environment. You're responsible for describing what happens. You're responsible for directing resources and people. You're responsible for leading folks. And you're also responsible for assessing things. So just a few things. I mean, just a handful of major components that you have to do. And when you think about your organizations, right? When you think about your organizations, you have great folks, you have great teammates, but there's only there's 5% in all of our jobs that only we can do based on the authority we're given by the position that we have. If you go outside that 5%, you're not leveraging your human capital in a meaningful way, which means you're doing more work, which gets you frustrated and causes consternation within your organization. But if you're able to think about those few things you're responsible for, then you're able to empower your organization and create alignment. And once you kind of start that, it's really infectious. And then your whole organization kind of knows what's going on. And you create a culture of constant folks who are leading at every level. Because whether we like it or not, all the folks within our organization have to consider ourselves as some kind of leader at some way, some kind of sphere of responsibility, even if it's just at a keyboard. There's some leadership required, whether we want to acknowledge it or not. So what I'm going to share with you now is this idea of mission command, that commander's intent falls within. So commander's intent falls within a broader construct of mission command, just so you understand where it comes from and how we operate as a service and how it translates to what you are dealing with on a daily basis. And I'll do that through some stories. All right, you got to tell some cool stories. All right, it's like a thing. So the first one is the hardest one. Think about it. The Ray Odierno, the former chief of staff of the Army, highlighted that leaders must establish trust with the soldiers. Soldiers must believe what leaders tell them, because trust is the easiest thing that disappears within an organization. And we all kind of understand that. If we can't develop trust, there's a problem. Okay? So this is the hardest one. So of the 6 principles, in my opinion, this is the toughest. How do you establish trust within an organization? One way to motivate this is there's another fantastic garden spot called Fort Polk, Louisiana. It's in western Louisiana. We've been practicing war there for about almost 100 years now. Again, great mosquitoes, fantastic alligators, great humidity. Highly recommend going there when you have the opportunity. It's like 4 hours from New Orleans. Okay, so we go there to train. I was in command. I took part of my task force of 420 folks. I took those folks down to Louisiana, do an exercise. During that exercise, before we had to go into the next set of operations, my helicopter started to break. That is a problem. Seeing that we're there to move infantrymen, like folks with rifles, to go and practice fighting, they can't get to the fight if I can't get them there. So my helicopter started to break. That's a problem. So I went to my staff and said, hey, folks, how are we going to fix the helicopters? I just kind of sit back. Like, okay, sir, we need to get some get some parts. Like, okay, that's great. It's like Thursday. We have to fly on Sunday. How do we get the parts? Like, well, sir, we can fly them there. We can use FedEx. Like, that won't work because we're like in the bush and we can't like pick up stuff. We could drive them. So you want me to put like $5 million worth of equipment on the back of a U-Haul truck and have like two 18-year-olds drive them 16 hours one way? That's like, I'm not assuming that risk. You know, I'm a risk taker, but I'm not stupid. Or we could try to fly them ourselves, because we have helicopters. I can like fly them myself. I'm not, fraud, waste, and abuse or nothing. It's all legal. All right. So I said, okay, great, we'll fly them. That'll work. And so do all you have driver's licenses? Okay. So within the folks who fly helicopters, like myself and JC used to do, we're called pilot in command. So we're like guys with our license. When you come out of flight school, I mean, you have like a learner's permit. You barely know enough to like kill yourself. And then you have these guys called warrant officers who are like your trainers. They're like your student driver and teacher person. And after so long, you get good, they sign you off and give you your license. So I picked the folks who just got their license. So what do you think my staff told me? What's the first thing my staff said to me when I picked the most junior folks in the organization who just got their license to do a major mission where they got to fly 8 hours in one day to get the parts? What do you think? What do you think they said? That is so nice. That is so, I wish they would have said that. Are you sure? Anyone else? Just one more. Any other comments on what they probably said to me? Are you crazy? That's even nicer. I mean, I had a very open kind of, although we're hierarchical and stuff, authoritative, I had a very open environment, having just come out of a doctoral program to command. So I was like, hey, let's be friendly, let's be collaborative. And so they said other things. But I listened to them, right? Took in what they said. And they said, no, these two guys are going to do it. Okay? So, plot revealed. They flew the mission. They got the parts. They came back. It was dangerous because we didn't end up flying them on a Sunday, when it means everything's closed on Sunday. So it's harder to fly stuff across the country. Weather was fine. We fixed helicopters. We did the mission. We won. All right? So we won. So, I mean, everything worked out. We were great. Had we lost, I would have gotten in trouble by somebody. So the point is, what happened is I built trust in the organization. Because if we're willing to sign someone off and say you're good, we showed the organization that we meant it. Those individuals who got to fly the mission, that's what they're trained to do. They got to do what they're trained to do. And as brand new pilot in command, think about the confidence that was just infused in those individuals by feeling the support. And understanding that had they failed, it's kind of like a CISO. I get fired. You get a breach. I mean, it's like written in some contract or something. I read it somewhere online that that's what happens. But so building trust, okay? Really key thing. But sometimes you just have to listen to your people and then explain what's going on. So that's kind of the takeaway from that one. This next one is, think about another soft one, building discipline initiative. Well, what is undisciplined initiative? All discipline initiative is someone's ability to take what you say, see an opportunity to exploit a situation that adds value to an organization, so they're not paralyzed. That's all discipline initiative is. And one example of this, and you can Google this, I'm not making this up, there's a reason why the silly string. Around 2006, 2007, during the surge in Iraq, we had a lot of situations going on. We were like going house to house. Unfortunately, we were, a lot of booby traps were happening. So there was a soldier who had just gotten some silly string in his care package, and then he went inside one of the rooms and literally he said, "Stop," and moved the silly string. So what happens if you send silly string in a room and it hangs at 6 feet or 3 feet off the ground? What's in the room? Tripwire. I mean, it's going to hang on stuff. Because the generals we had were like, we're going to get dogs, and we're going to get, move satellites, and we're going to, acquire some new Uber technology. And I think silly string's like $1.70. And like a specialist in the Army, so someone about 21-ish, came up with this idea that he stole from a Marine, full disclosure. And he did it. And if you look this up, you'll see that the Department of Defense bought like 2 million balls of silly string-ish in like 2007 for this reason. And so a soldier operating in discipline initiative, sometimes you just have to, allow folks to show their greatness if given the appropriate environment, okay? So very cheap, resourceful, and these are the kind of individuals you want on your team. Folks who can think outside the box, not too far outside the box, but outside the box in a way to add value to the organization. And this particular one saved lives during that period of time during the Iraq conflict. The last soft one is prudent risk. Even we in the Army acknowledge that prudent is kind of a vague word. So what does that really mean? And all prudent risk really is, and a lot of you manage risk every day. When the leader makes a decision and is willing to give up, lose something, it could be life, limb, or eyesight. It could be understanding they're going to have to, if they take this action, loss will happen. But it's a deliberate decision. It is not a gamble. So risk does not equal gamble. Prudent risk is not a gamble. Is where a very deliberate process that you leverage every day to operate in the environments that you operate in. And so that's all really prudent risk is. And this is on the art of command. So the soft stuff, the things that are hard to touch. And now we're going to transition to what's a little bit more tangible, some of the hard stuff, okay? So we have the art of command, signs of control. So, control, hold on to it. Very militaristic, right? So, mission orders. All of your organizations, I'm sure, have some kind of SOP, run book, policy, some way in which you operate. In the military, we use mission orders. And all a mission order is, it provides context. It gives us the who, what, when, why, and how. It provides the situation. Gives us some logistical information, some communications information. All of it is very standardized. So no matter if you talk to any of the folks who have any association with the military, and they say, show me an operations order, we all will think the exact same thing. The exact same thing, because that's how we're wired, okay? And so this helps an organization drive itself the same way, same day, because we have a very standardized way of talking to each other and communicating. One example of this is whenever we go to that garden spot in Louisiana, we're always part of a very large organization. So when I went, I would always be part of a separate, large 6,000-person organization with a commander who's not my own, a leader who's not my organic leader. And so one time I was there, my organic leader, who wasn't mine, did a fantastic job managing his subordinate units by providing like a paragraph, so about 10 sentences, that explained what he wanted us to do. So when you think about it, you have different types of organizations, and he put out one thing with 10 sentences, and that one thing drove how he operated. I mean, that's pretty cool. And he didn't tell us, he told us what to do. He did not tell us how to do it. And we could pull out our part from that 10-sentence PowerPoint and mission order in a way in which allowed us to be very effective as an organization and win the fight during that part of the operation. Okay? And so the ability to communicate in concise ways and allow your people to do what they're hired to do, it gives you trade space, because you tell them, what you want, but you don't tell them how to do it, because some of your brilliant folks can come up with very innovative ways in order to get at the end result. It's something to think about. I like pancakes. I make them at home. I don't eat them at IHOP. But when I was in command, this idea of shared understanding came up because when we all took command, we all, meaning the group of guys I was with, and we were all guys, we all showed up at the same time. So think about if all of your VPs, all your senior executives all changed out at the exact same time. You got brand new ones. So we didn't really know each other. We go in to see our boss. Our boss tells us, hey, okay, fellas, what I want you to do is integrate with the division. A division is a very large organization, and the 82nd Airborne is 18,000 paratroopers. We're the aviation part of that. It's like, integrate with the division. I'm like, okay. Boss, okay, tell us more. That's all he said. We all leave. We all go back to our headquarters, sit in our offices, and we're all thinking. And then I call my buddy. What did you hear? What did you hear? And we all heard something different from that one term. So we started as commanders, as leaders, coming together and going to IHOP like once a month, actually every 2 weeks. We go to IHOP. And it was more of like a counseling session, like couch time with each other to kind of talk through our struggles as commanders, because you have no one to talk to when you're like a leader person. But we were able to understand what each of us understood from that one statement, and then we're able to, when we're in conversation, I wasn't talking about what I did or what my unit was doing. I was talking about what Travis's unit was doing and how his unit is helping, or what Steve's doing, or what Andy's doing. And so, as a group, the outward look was that, man, that's a good team, because they're never talking about themselves. They're always engaged in understanding what each other's doing, which is very hard when you think about a 3,000-person organization with 110 helicopters that are being flung across the U.S. and the globe. Because at one point, we had helicopters across the globe. So the sun never set on our organization, because we had people flung across the globe. But we all understood what was happening. So we created shared understanding based on the need to better enact what our boss wanted us to do. So we created shared understanding in that way. That was one way to think about it, about doing it. And I'm sure in your organizations, you do something similar with your peers, maybe. And if not, I'd recommend it, because it helps, just build camaraderie amongst the organization and a collaborative culture, which is what we did. And the last hard one, which is something that you can walk away today with. Okay? Something you can walk away today with is this idea of commander's intent. And the best example of this is June 6, 1944, when we hit D-Day. Because when you think about it, every individual in D-Day knew the plan. Big broad strokes. Night airborne raid. Paratroopers hit the ground. Paratroopers walk to the German guns. Paratroopers take out German guns. Amphibious assault happens the next day. That's the plan. Everybody knew it. There was clear purpose, key task, and end state that everyone knew. What are we doing? What are the key things we have to do? And how do we want it to end? In this case, we want the guns down so we can take the beach. Okay? Now what really happens is we have an airborne assault, planes are blown up all over the place, we have paratroopers flung across France, and then they get up and come together, 101st, 82nd, and others, and they become little groups of paratroopers. And they all start walking towards the beach, because they know they have to get the guns down in order for the assault to happen the next morning. That's how we really want a lot of organizations to operate. But it's a hard thing. In my travels, and as I talk to organizations, we sometimes don't want to provide an end state, because that requires us as leaders to think about, how do we want something to end? And how many of us have ever dealt with the idea that I'll know it when I see it? I don't know about you, but that really frustrates me when someone says that to me. I'll know it when I see it, because you're not doing the hard work, okay? And then when you think about key tasks, those are the things that if they are not done, your operation will fail. If they are not done, your operation will fail. And then you provide some kind of purpose. Why are we doing it? Because when you think about it, when you give your individuals the why, you're giving them that left and right limits they need in order to operate so they can exercise discipline initiative. They trust you because they believe what you're saying to them, and you're providing them a clear understanding on how you want something to end, so they might come up with some innovative thing you hadn't even thought of. Because do you really care about how they get to the end? You just want to win. You just want to add value. And by leveraging something like the commander's intent, it's just a framework, and you can call it what you want, commander's intent, leader's intent, whatever, but it's a framework which allows you to think critically about what do you want. And in the military, we do it for every single operation. I want to take some guys to the basketball court. There's an operations order with a commander's intent in it. I want to roll people 1,000 miles. There's a commander's intent. I want to move a unit from Germany to Iraq or Afghanistan. There's a commander's intent. And you would think it's long. It's never really long. There's been commander's intent that are like one sentence. Go north. Crazy, but that really happened. Okay? So this is something that you can walk away today, and there's probably something you already have right now. There's probably some kind of parts of this that you have within your organizations that you leverage. You just call it something different. And again, as you think about some of the stories I've shared with you, it's just context. So don't think that these military examples, I mean, that is so extreme. Like, no, not really. The same endorphins that happen when I'm flying a helicopter or I'm in an op center is the exact same endorphins that are exercised when you're under some kind of cyber attack or some kind of event that causes you to increase your pucker factor, so to speak. Okay? And so, real people, real parachutes, okay? Not just Photoshop. So when you parachute back into your day, when you leave here at the end of the day, and go back to your organizations, I ask that you really think about how can you leverage some of these frameworks before you get overcome by events in your organizations. And think about how are you going to listen to your individuals and provide some guidance. Are you going to ensure you don't tell them how to do things, just tell them what you want. You provide some kind of commander's intent or some kind of leader's intent. You ensure that you're trying to develop that trust, and you're allowing your individuals, your folks, your teammates who you've hired, and who are fantastic individuals, to be able to exercise discipline initiative and not get crushed if they do something outside the lines. Okay? And I really appreciate your time and attention. I'll be hanging out here all day. And before you go up, we're going to be able to practice here in just a second, but I'm going to hand it over to Gary. But thank you very much.